Hello everyone, today I'm looking at Legend of Dragoon. This one was really good. I'm really surprised that a lot of people don't really talk about this. I've been going on this kind of new arc or binge on PlayStation era RPGs, and I don't know. This one just really blew me away. I just forgot how much fun turn-based combat can actually be in turn-based games if they have really good story, characters, settings. The main thing that I think about when I think about this game is actually Final Fantasy VII. This was a Skia product, Sony Computer Entertainment America, and it most resembles Final Fantasy VII. And I think that's really interesting because I dabbled in Final Fantasy VIII a few years ago and really didn't click with it. And just after trying this, I actually popped in Final Fantasy IX expecting the same thing. And yeah, I really didn't vibe with it. It seems 8 and 9 are two games that the community doesn't really talk about or doesn't get into. And it's interesting that 7 came out in 97 and this game came out in 2000. So it had been 3 years. And so this feels more in line mechanically, stylistically with Final Fantasy VII, except it's more so high fantasy. But it has pre-rendered backgrounds with the character being very obviously sprite-based, and there's some jarring contrast between that. But they really went full and ham on the pre-rendered backgrounds. Some of these pre-rendered backgrounds are exquisite. They are pieces of art, and it's so frustrating that even if you see a gif of some of these where they have movement and motion, like all these lights and mosaics shifting and moving, there's nothing quite like seeing it being played off a screen natively than something that's been recreated through a gif or WebM or something else. It really has a very immersive quality that I really, really like. There's also a bunch of tropes in here that reminds me of my other favorite series, which is, or my other favorite JRPG, which is Skies of Arcadia. And some similarities here are that each character, it's kind of it's kind of Power Rangers themed, and that each character, they have a designated color, a designated element. One of them being the moon. And each character kind of has to awaken to their power kind of thing, as well as each one of them has their own backstory. And they all band together to fight against an empire that has invaded. And curiously, in Arcadia's case, both the emperors, I think, have Spanish names. And this one, it's Dol, which doesn't sound Spanish, but his brother is Carlos, and his ancestor is Diaz. While in Arcadia, I don't remember the name of the emperor or the imperialists, but I think it was like Cortez or something like that. Anyway, so it just seems like they're very much in the same, working from the same cloth or the same community workshop or something. I'm not sure what to say. So Legend of Dragoon, what also I think is very interesting about it is how much it has influenced other works. Dragoons as a concept, similar to vampires or knights or paladins, isn't really a broad thing. The idea of these half human, half dragon, or dragon power wielding humans isn't a really established lore thing yet, like a vampire, which has been around for at least 100 years. But I think in terms of this game, what I've seen, or what I have seen of other properties that have this idea of a dragoon, half person, half dragon warrior, seem to borrow heavily from this game. For example, Final Fantasy XIV Heavensward, where it's all about dragoons and the dragoon class and that whole aesthetic and area and the cannons they use, the armor they use, the weapons they use, the styles they use, very similar to this game. Of course, I'm not saying this is the originator of the idea of the dragoon. I don't know what it is, but as far in terms of my cultural taste, this is the one that jumps out to me the most as, oh yeah, this is where dragoons come from. I can't think of anything before this or significant that was before this that really invented it. But I'm sure this concept has been around in books and other things much more before this game, but this is the first piece of property where it's like, yes, this is just about Dragoons, and we're going hard on that. So, I mean, let's jump into a little bit of the story and what it's about. So, again, the story, it's really good. It just takes a while to develop, I think. So, you're a kid in some village, gets attacked by the Empire. They kill everyone. They steal your girl, and you follow them to, the prison island prison place to go save her, and then you end up meeting your guide and character and all these other people, and you start your adventure to take down the Empire. And so the whole dragon aspect is that there are dragons in this world, and they're being used by the Empire as these super weapons to destroy the other countries around the nation. And so what essentially happens is, and I just beat it, so it was like for me, it was 60 hours. On online, it said it's a 45-hour game, so I kind of overshot that, I guess, because of the last disc, which I'll get into. But essentially, a dragon spirit is embodied in a gem, and you use that gem and you power up, and you turn it into Dragoon form, and then you can do all these really cool moves. And quite honestly, I think it was weird because I first actually started playing this game on PS4, I think, where there was like a demo or some kind of free trial or PS Plus or whatever. And so I played it there first off, and I was kind of like, very lukewarm on it. It's just like, okay, this is very generic final, high fantasy. What it really reminded me of, especially Rose's aesthetic, it reminded me of Records of the Lotus War, and that's kind of a semi-iconic anime, and because it was kind of reintroducing Western fantasy, and the designs of, I think, Deedlit are the only thing that people really remember from the show. And while I think that is, I think there was like a Castlevania spin-off based off that game that came out a few years ago, which is the weirdest thing. It's like, oh, I'm playing as Deedlit and it's Castlevania, so I'm fighting like Alucard. It was really weird. That's just what I was thinking of. But I remember I actually watched Records of the Lotus War, and man, it's not a show you watch. It's like Black Rock Shooter, where the designs were so good they made a show based off it. Where in this show, the designs are really good, but the show itself is so boring. Like, it's so generic, so boring. Evil Emperor, whatever. So when I saw Rose's design, I thought, okay, cool. This game had a certain aesthetic, a certain style was popular with some people, but in longevity, it's probably not that good. So I kind of just dropped it. But then I don't know if I'm pretty sure I bought it or someone else in my house bought it, but there was a PS1 version. So I thought, okay, I was going through all my PS1 games, and I was kind of being, purging or very methodical about it, essentially. And so I popped it in. I thought, you know what? I tried this game on the PS4. Probably not going to like it. But you know what? Let's just play it on the original software, original hardware, and just see where it goes. And man, I don't know if it was something about the rendering, but rewatching even the intro to Legend of Dragoon is the most soulful thing I think I've ever seen. If I wanted to express what soul was, I would show them the intro to this game or maybe Suikoden. And the discussion around soul might be a little bit more off the rails, but the things that scream soul to me are the fact that you have multi-layered text, some of it in Japanese, some of it in English, and there's like a blur effect to it. It's kind of this chaotic dirtiness where you're trying to express an emotion that's getting lost, and it's only through successive generations that people decide to clean up or remaster the footage and try to make it more clear, and it loses all of the ephemeral aspects to it. The idea of having font and then having blurry, distorted, compressed graphics or blurred things over it that makes it kind of hard to read, but you can still get the idea and the notion of it. That's kind of soul in a nutshell. It's something that is the individual, the director, has a vision that they're trying to express, and it's trying to express itself in a imperfect way. If something is perfect, I don't think it can be soulful. There are arguably perfect games, but people use that term in terms of like it's a masterpiece. It's a distinct thing in some way. In fact, I don't think there is such a thing as a perfect game. I think if anything was perfect, it might be very boring, like a perfect cut cube or a perfect machine cut thing. Anyway, this is a tangent as I thought I was as I was going to be, so I'm not gonna get off this. But the intro to me kind of sucked me back in, and so I started replaying the game on the PS1, and for some reason it just clicked with me, and I kind of really got into the pacing of the game. And what I really enjoyed about Legend of Dragoon and in any game in general is good pacing trumps everything. Absolutely everything. And this is the problem with my other games that I've played, is that I just drop them at a certain point. I just do not I don't care. I don't care. If we're on this massive quest and you want me to go find the bread or the rock or the stone, I don't care. You've lost to me. We were fighting the evil emperor and now we're doing side quest stuff that you're forcing into it. Anyway, so Legend of Dragoon, the pacing, I know, I just played a little bit more and the pacing just hit off. I was like, okay, it's attack, get the girl, go to the prison. We're at the prison. Turns out there's an evil emperor. Now we have to find this guy who's actually a knight of the king. So we got to go here. So it's just the pacing is so rapid and so good. And it reminds me that it really stands the test of time. A perfect example is another favorite RPG of mine that I never thought in a million years that I would enjoy, was Mother 1 on the NES. And I was playing on the Virtual Console, but I just thought, oh, okay, it's Mother 1. We'll just give this a shot. We'll jiggle it around and play with it and do the zip it, zap it, bop it. And I beat that whole thing. I was like, how did they do this? How did they get me hooked on a little crunchy, graphic game RPG open world on the NES? Like, it's rough, man. It is rough in some cases. But the gameplay is serviceable, it's fine. But the pacing of, okay, we gotta go here. I remember games, even like Tales of Symphonia. I love that game. But I remember every time I had put it down and I was playing it the next weekend or a week later, I always thought, where the heck am I? And what the hell am I doing? What's going on? And they even have like a little recap thing, and I'd read and watch the recap thing, and then I would go, okay, I got it. Meanwhile, my mind, I still have no idea what's going on. So pacing, I don't know. It's like a magic trick that if you have good pacing, you can make a story about an ant or about anything exciting. Okay, Bug's Life, whatever. But yeah, like literally anything can be interesting if you have good pacing, good characters, good story, and Dragoon has a lot of that. I would say the characters are very, very strong. Even the last guy who got Congo Barbarian, spoilers, who's basically just Conan. And what's crazy to me is there's so much of Legend of Dragoon that breaks convention. Not breaks convention, but there's just literally unpredictable scenarios. There's this one time where you come into the Imperial City and there's like a guy selling the scales or the feathers of he's selling feathers of a dragon, which doesn't make sense because he's a con artist, and he's saying, oh yeah, no, I'm a dragon slayer, whatever, and he's trying to sell this stuff and be a shyster or whatever. And so you come into the bar and he tries to sell you and you say no. And then there's a Imperial soldier who comes in, says, I heard there's a dragon slayer in there. Is he here? And he just kind of tries to walk out of the bar. And he says, no. And he grabs him by the collar and says, we need you on our team. We're fighting against, they can't lie because they lost a dragon that was loyal to the Empire and it died to a Dragoon. So they need a Dragoon or a dragon slayer. He's like, no, I'm just a businessman. He says, don't care. You're getting recruited into the army anyway. Just these funny scenarios that are like, oh, wow, that's actually genuinely funny or well written. I will say, though, that one big issue that I hate and love about Legend of Dragoon is the translation in the text and also the voice acting is atrocious. The text itself isn't bad. There's just very odd things. For example, when you go to your party select screen, you always have Dart as the main character, but it has a sign over it saying like, okay, you can't change out Dart, but it says don't select. It's like, well, I can't select it. It should say something like fixed or unchangeable or something, but it says don't select, as if it's like a weird threat. And you'll see that a lot of text in the game is just kind of odd. And another thing, for example, when you want to equip something, you go to your equipment thing, it says armed. So what you're armed with is how you select your equipment. Items is fortunately called items. The other thing too is I mean, a cool mechanic is the additions, and of course, again, another translation issue. What the hell is is an addition? So in the menu, when you click on it, it's essentially the moves you make. So this is getting more into the basic mechanics of how the game actually works, which is that yes, it is completely turn-based. However, when the character is attacking, they will have a button prompt where if you time it right, they'll do an extra attack and they'll do the full attack. So when you first start the game, you only have one prompt and you'll do like extra damage. And as the game goes on, I actually didn't realize this until maybe like halfway through the game, is that additions level up and they max out at level 80, and it does not tell you this whatsoever. So you might do like a double slash demon fang kind of thing. And once you hit level 80, I think it does more damage. I'm not sure, but what it definitely does, it gives you more SP, spirit power. So if you do it successfully, you can transform into a Dragoon. And so each successive one has more button prompts, and the attacks get far more complicated. And what's great about it is that if you do it successfully, they'll yell at the name of the attack, like Dragon Fang or Gust of Wind Dance or Harpoon. And yeah, and as I said, the voice acting is atrocious, but charmingly so. It is so charmingly atrocious. Like, this is D tier level voice acting. Like, this is like really, really bad. This is your neighbor's friends' kids in the backyard voice acting. Like, there are parts where it's unintentionally the funniest thing. Like, I showed a friend the final cutscene of the game just because the voices were so bad. Like, you can laugh at it on its own. More so the CG cutscenes where the lips don't even try to match up. They don't even try to link up. And it is just abysmal. But it's very entertaining. And it doesn't, I think, it takes away a little bit, but it doesn't undercut the seriousness of the game. And that's what I do appreciate. The game is trying to be very kind of serious, but it's trying really hard to be cool. And it succeeds, I feel, in that case. And by the way, it's always the same button prompt. You're always just pressing X. And at first it's fine, but later in the game, there are certain button prompts where you have to do like 5 or 6 in a row. And if you get them all, you do like extra damage, so it's great. I think you get roughly the same amount of SP unless you level it up by doing it more. But the one issue is that you get like 4 to 5 correct, and you wouldn't get the spirit point bonus, and you also wouldn't get a tick on the level up because it's only every time you do it, like, you know, Skyrim or whatever. The more you do something, more levels up. So it got kind of frustrating where there was one day where I decided, you know what, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to grind out and max out all of my additions before I go to the final boss. That was really boring because it's just doing QTEs over and over and over again. And I couldn't grind. I don't know, maybe I can't grind anymore. I'm getting very tired of grinding in games. And that is a good thing because most of Dragoon is not grinding. There is no grinding. You just move from story beat to story beat. And on that point as well, I find that there's a lot of, I wouldn't say cutscenes because they're not technically cutscenes, but there's a lot of dialogue in the game, a lot of story and development, and it's actually very comforting in a way, in the sense that it's very predictable that, okay, I'm going to go to the open world, go through this little forest area, open world, no, not a dungeon. Then there's going to be a bunch of story and conflict and whatever once I go to the next area. And then after that's done, they're going to send me to the main kind of dungeon or trial where I might have to go back to that forest and fight a boss, and there's going to be a mini boss, and so on and so forth. And so it got into a pattern and a feeling that, okay, if I don't have a lot of time right now, or I'm really tired, I know that this section of the game, I could almost predict that this is all going to be text-based story. Like, tell me a story, and then I don't have the brain power if I'm like super tired from whatever. I don't have the time to strategize or think which items I have to get or upgrade, or buy this item, or upgrade my characters. Like, it's just too much. So I know I could turn off my brain at certain points and it would just tell me a story. And it's a cool concept. I don't know if the future of gaming will have that ability to choose, hey, tell me the story part, or turn this gameplay into story mode, which technically already exists, unfortunately. Because I think the gameplay is integral to the full experience and intended experience of the game, except for games that are like Telltale games, let's be honest. But yeah, no, I'd say the story in Dragoon is pretty good. Where it goes is pretty interesting. I don't want to give too much away, but I will say essentially the background. And again, this is a translation. It's translation that just drives me crazy, because you have this really cool ancient race of beings that are essentially angels, and they give them the stupidest name possible. The stupidest name possible. And so essentially there was this ancient war between human dragons and these angelic-like beings called winglies. Something you would name like a Moogle or a Chocobo. Yeah, these are the ancient race of ultra-powerful people. Winglies. Give me a break, man. Give me a break. So it just, it's cringe. But then you see, what they look like. I'm like, okay, it's like, whatever. I'll just pretend that they're not. I literally try to substitute winglies with like the winged ones, or, the archangels. But no, they just keep saying winglies over and over. And just, all right, fine, I gave up. I tried to make it cool on my own behalf, but it wasn't working. But yeah, there's this really cool concept. And I was talking to a friend of mine about this. In JRPGs, you're always killing God, right? Or really the demiurge. It's all based around Gnosticism, and I'm not sure why. I think there's a video explaining why Gnosticism is the core of Japanese JRPGs, and I don't think it really answered. I think he just told us what Gnosticism was. It doesn't matter. I have to go back and watch that anyway. But the point is, it has the same deal here. So you have essentially the creator of the universe called Soa, and you have one of these winglies called Mafuta Frama or something, Mapu Frama. And so it's a really cool story. Is the way the story goes is that God, Soa, created the world, the earth, the laws, and then the last thing he made was the Tree of Life. And I'm so thankful they did something different with the Tree of Life in this context. Like, for example, in Tales of Symphonia, the Tree of Life is just a tree that gives mana to the world. Like, that's it. It's energy. Like, who cares? So this one is much more nuanced and much more interesting. So essentially what happens is that you have the Tree of Life, and this Tree of Life is literally a tree that births each species of of life form on the planet. And apparently there are only 108 species. And each species that is born successively is more advanced than the last one. So it's something like humans are, I forgot, they're like 106, or like around 100. Dragons are like 105. Winglies are 107. And the last race is 108, which is the Virage. And so what occurs is pretty cool, is that the leader of the winglies, they're so advanced they actually know that this thing is going to happen, and they know that they're going to be replaced and kind of wiped out into extinction when this even more powerful race arrives. So what they do is, and again, this very much reminds me of things that are into Drakengard. what the leader of these winged people do is they find the tree of life, they find the final seed, the 108th seed that will birth Viraj, and they separate the soul from the body. They somehow, using their magic, separate the soul from the egg, essentially. And in doing so, they banish it into the sky, and it becomes a moon. Already, this is like really cool stuff. And the Winglies, I just hate that name. So Mapu Frama essentially extracts the soul from this divine being and harnesses it as an energy source. And it gives them super magical powers. And they use this power to usurp not only God's plan, Soa's plan, but the rest of the other races. And so they enslave everyone else by using this forbidden power, essentially, that was, supposed to be for this other thing. And to give you an idea what the Viraj looks like, it's kind of a combination of a dragon and like an alien. It looks like an alien dragon, kind of, except it's more bulky. It does have wings and shoots laser beams out of his eyes and all that good stuff. And the Winglies are just humanoids with wings that kind of almost. I mean, in the CG cutscenes, they looked like normal wings, but in the in-game cutscenes, they kind of work like jetpacks. So it's kind of a bit of both. So anyway, they enslave everyone, and the humans rise up, they rebel, and somehow they figure out, and I forgot this part, but they figure out how to essentially utilize the power of the dragons. So all the races essentially team up to fight the Winglies, and the humans, certain ones of them are able to absorb dragon souls, and so you have a half-human, half-dragon humans who essentially combine their powers and get dragon wings, and they're able to be comparable and one-on-one with these usurpers, these usurping angels, more or less. And so they have this gigantic war, and it leads to this destruction of high civilization, and everything gets destroyed, and it spends 10,000 years in the Dark Ages. Meanwhile, there are certain humans and Winglies that, of course, survive this and are plotting things in the background. And so even though you have an emperor who's been controlled by one of the ancient Winglies, obviously who's evil, and one of the good guys is also one of these ancient people that you don't realize. And dragons still exist, but they're kind of almost gone extinct, and they're being utilized in modern day to, fight wars and stuff. And so, yeah, the leader of the Winglies is, trying to recreate this civilization. And well, actually, the ultimate goal is that he's actually trying to correct the record. He actually wants to put Soa's plan back into motion, and he actually wants the Viraj to be born as intended. And essentially, you have this whole origin story where the moon every 108 years will turn red, and when that happens, a moon child is sent to Earth. So even though the spirit of the Viraj is separated, it's like the moon is sending like a child or a soul or a spirit down to Earth so it can I essentially come into contact with the spirit of the this doesn't make sense, but as somehow maybe it's not sending it down, maybe it's just coming from the origin of the Earth. But every 108 years, a child is born who is essentially has the spirit of the Viraj. And if that child somehow makes it to the moon or breaks the seals binding the separation ritual, then the Viraj will be born and the world will be essentially reset, and the next evolution will occur, and the Virages will rule the Earth as apparently God intended, or at least to their knowledge, that's what will happen. And so that's kind of the main story of Legend of Dragoon. There's also this whole other thing about the different characters, their struggles, their backgrounds. There's one guy called Heishel who is a martial artist master, and he has a daughter, and he's driving her to become the best in the world, and she ends up accidentally killing one of the other students, and she didn't even want to be a martial artist. She says, "Dad, I don't want to do this." And after she accidentally kills someone else, she runs away, and then he's been searching for her ever since. So yeah, the cast is really good, honestly. So you have the main character Dart, who's just the guy, and so the way it ties in is that on one of these years, on the 108th year, there is the Moonchild that's born, and then there is essentially a black monster. Well, I mean, this is where it gets kind of funny that they get confused between the entity that hunts the Moonchild, so humanity will be kept in preservation and not destroyed by Virage, or the possibility of it. You have the black monster, which destroys this town called Neat and burns it to the ground under a blood moon, on the moon that never sets. And so there's just a moon that's always in the sky during the day and anything, and it has this like bluish glow to it. And so Dart essentially is a kid in the village of Neat, and this is where he kind of begins, where his origin story is that the whole story, the whole town was destroyed by the Black Monster, and he's sworn revenge, eternal revenge on the Black Monster, who also killed his parents. Then he moves to this town called Celas, and in there they also get raided by the Empire, and so he's triggered flashback memories, and he decides to go save the girl in the village that they have captured, which they believe is the Moonchild. So, but this was 18 years after, so it's kind of interesting because the Moonchild would have already been born or destroyed in Neat during that blood moon, or were they? Anyway, it's a good story. It's legitimately a good story. Anyway, I won't say much more about it, but that's kind of Dart's character. The girl he's trying to rescue is called Shayna, or Shanna. I'm not actually sure. I think Shanna, and she she's just a girl, but she has a bow and arrow. She uses healing magic, and so she kind of becomes, the chosen one, the heiress of the group. While Dart is, he wields a sword, wears red armor, whatever. Then they have Rose, who is this very mysterious kind of emo girl character with long black hair. She has this blue armor, and she uses what does she use? Oh, she also uses a sword, but it's like a sword that's like tied to her wrist armor or something. It's a pretty interesting design, actually. And so her objective is to basically stop the Emperor, stop the dragons. She has some secret mission, and she's very mysterious about it. But obviously, she wants to help you and or help you out in some ways. But then she also has her own agenda. But she's pretty powerful. There's Lavitz, who is a knight of the kingdom, uses a spear, just stand up dude. You have I have talked about Haschel. And then it's interesting too in the story because some characters got replaced, like Lavitz gets replaced by Albert. Eventually later in the story, Shanna gets replaced by this new character called Miranda, who has the exact same moveset. So it's not really a huge big deal. They even inherit the same armor. The last two characters you get are Meru and Kongol. Meru's kind of interesting and fun. She is a dancer and a total ditz, and she uses a big hammer. She's kind of like Amy Rose, but she's all very blue-coated. And she almost has this light blue hair, at least in the portrait art. It says she's supposed to have platinum hair, but... And the first thing I thought of was like, oh, this is a not Miku character. I mean, she just has the same kind of energy and whatever. And then you find finally Kongol, who is a different race, apparently called Gigantos, who are these kind of giant bandit-like people who live in the desert mountain area. And I'm sorry, but Kongol is one of the most like crazy characters. In terms of the fact that he is a early stage boss, like he's kind of like the recurring boss that won't go away. I think you have to fight him twice, and the third time you think you have to fight him, he actually joins your party. It's like, wait, what? Yeah, I know there's tropes and memes about this, about when the bad guy joins your party, but I never thought in a million years there's like a main antagonist, Lloyd, who's a master swordsman. I just thought of Symphonia, by the way, but I thought at some point Lloyd would join your party because he has a very distinct design. He has a very cool move set. But no, the friggin' like starting almost comedy boss who talks in caveman speak, that's your final party member. Like that blew me away. I was trying to think of an analogy. It's like if I don't know, Pete in Kingdom Hearts joins your party. It's like if I don't know. It's like if Mido and Ocarina became a prominent character. I don't know. He's like a Groose character kind of. Um, but he's like a very bare bones antagonist that is not supposed to be anything more than a big dumb guy you're supposed to fight, and then he joins your party and has this huge kind of big backstory. It just was like, whoa, okay, I did not see this coming, but pleasantly surprised. But anyway, that's the cast of characters. Anyway, I you can tell I really enjoyed this game because at a certain point playing this game, I had the reflection that when you have just the right amount of people and characters in your party, and you have a predictable idea of, okay, what's gameplay going to be like? Oh, this is going to be a story moment. Even though these are really long RPGs and JRPGs, I found it very pleasant and enjoyable to kind of play a little bit of it every day. Like just playing it for a couple hours was actually very enjoyable. And I have not experienced that with a long game, for quite a while, because most RPGs, they kind of expect you to remember all the mechanics and the very subtle things, and it has a million side quests you were doing, and you have to remember where you were going, what you were doing. Oh, right, no, don't sell that piece of armor because because this one, and I have to go back here and do this enchanting thing to see if that even gives me a boost and all that stuff. It's very streamlined and very linear in a very pleasant way, to the point where Dragoon almost felt almost like a sitcom or something. It felt like a comfort place where I could come to and I could just play a couple of hours of it every day. And it was enjoyable. It wasn't like these super long RPGs where it feels like a chore. It's like, oh, great. We're in the swamp area with the worst character in the game giving us the worst dialogue I've ever heard. And here, I've never felt that. It felt like every day was a different adventure. Every day was a little episode, a little bit of character development, a little like a new town to discover, a new thing, a new moveset, and it was never overly complicated. It was very streamlined, and I feel like a lot of games in after this, in the future of the genre, have just added so many things that it feels impossible to have like a daily episode. And it felt kind of episodic in a way. Even to that extent, what I found very endearing is the fact that this game comes with 4 discs, which is pretty crazy, but pretty cool as well. And what I liked about it is each one of the discs became predictable as to what was going to happen by the time I got to disc 2. So what changed is that you kind of leave your section of the continent and you go to a new section. And there's also the fact that I realized, oh, when I put in the disc 2, the opening cutscene is gone, or the intro cutscene for the main menu. And so I realized, oh, right, they were literally trying to save so much space that they removed the CG cutscene from the second and third and fourth discs, so they could put more CG cutscenes in the rest of the game, which is, oh my god, that's so of the time kind of thing. And so you know that when you got a new disc, you got roughly another 15 more hours of content. So you have a new map, new story, and you can guarantee there's going to be a bunch of new CG cutscenes. And so it was kind of a very nice way to layer out the game in these different discs, because it was almost like a checkpoint that you knew, okay, I finished this section and I know what to expect from the next section. And I think it's good we talk about this, because I do have to talk about the one thing that I do have kind of an issue with. I mean, the game, for the most part, is fantastic and great. But the one complaint I do have is disc 4. It's just that I feel the game was so well paced and so well thought out, and just moving at a good great and all the story elements and everything, and you get to disc 4 and the pacing just dies. It just dies and it becomes this weird moment. I feel like if I got to the end of disc 3 and it went right into a final boss fight right then and there, I'd be much more satisfied with the overall experience. But disc 4 feels like it's just stretching it way too much into a world that I just don't care to be in. And honestly, the fourth disc feels like DLC in the sense that by the end of the third disc, the final boss has revealed his identity, revealed his master plan, and he is ready to throw down and finally execute, and do it, and can confront you about everything. And it's after this where you have to load disc 4, and I think what happens is like you fall down like some hole or something, and what occurs is that you have to go to these 3 different ancient cities where you have to essentially guard these they're called signets, the signets which guard the moon from coming back down, and recreating the tree of life. And it's so obvious that as soon as you get to these things, they're going to be destroyed by the antagonist, but you do it anyway. But it just feels like padding. I don't know. They just wanted an excuse. They had some check marks where, okay, we have to have the final section of the game be this incredibly weird looking, ultra bizarre area or place that is completely crazy and filled with super powerful monsters to really test the player. But it just felt like such, I don't know, not slop, but just like padding, like DLC. I did not care for the last places of the game. I mean, and they're kind of cool in concept, but it's like we were going through all these story beats, and now we're getting lore like lectures about, oh yes, the ancient city of Mayfield. It was, this blah blah blah. It's like, I don't really care. I want to fight the final antagonist. I was literally right there, ready to throw down, and now we're doing all this other stuff that isn't really developing anything. I think the one good thing it did do at the end, and I say good and whatever kind of thing, is, for example, in the last list, they introduce like you get out of the underground desert area, which is really cool. And I thought, okay, this is gonna be the final area. I thought this last disc might be like really short, maybe only 5 hours, or like this is just for the final area of the game. But you get out of there, out of this really weird underground desert, and then you have to go to this crappy little like pirate martial arts. You go to Heyshel's hometown of Rogue, and like you've been through these ancient castles and hyper advanced hidden technology labyrinths, and you go to this crappy little pirate bay that is like a bunch of sticks floating in the water. It feels super anticlimactic, and yes, you go there to get to this underwater super advanced area, but the other reason you were going there is so you could also do a Heyshel's backstory. And later on in the disc, you also have this thing where you have a bunch of mirrors and people get a bunch of their backstories told. So, what is this person's, and they all have to face their fear kind of thing, overcome. Heysel has to personally fight an evil version of his daughter who said, I never loved you, and all this stuff. And then you have to make a dialogue option. So kind of very Undertale-esque in that sense, where you have to, struggle with every person's interpersonal demon. And that was fine. That was fun. It was more or less streamlined. But then there were some things that I didn't really need to know or do, or like just the fact that we're going to Rogue at this point of the game felt like the developers just forgot to put this in, like, oh no, we promise we do this, but it breaks up the pacing like so badly. And then you're going to these 3 other places and you just know there's like, it's just the slow point. It's like that point in Final Fantasy VII where Cloud ends up in a wheelchair because he got miasma or whatever poisoning. And it's just suddenly, okay, so we have to go be Tifa and Barrett now. I'm even trying to remember that section of the game, and it's just a blur. And yeah, And to add insult to injury, one of the worst dungeons I would say is in this section, with the second one, the City of Law Zenibatos, because oh my god, I get it, it's a city of law and everything is highly strict and whatever, but there's this one section where in order to activate the teleporter and a bunch of other things to the next area or to beat the dungeon, you have to go to like the legal council of, it's like this ancient city that's being run by robots. So you have to go to this legal council area. You have to talk to one of the counselors to get a license to go to the other end of the dungeon to give the license to this thing to create and amend a new law, who then asks you to go to the other end of the dungeon and then input this thing, and then that thing will have been changed. And you have to do this multiple times to get the full effect. You could just, you could just do it to get the teleporter working, but there's other things like you can, stop the deliberation, so you can interrupt the process, make it a little bit more expedient. There's one where you can stop all enemies from spawning in, which is like, okay, that's one of the first things you do. So there's lots, and it's really cool because they ask you the legal code. So you have to actually pay attention to the lore in the area and what the robots are saying and say, okay, we're going to amend. And so you can't really choose how to change the law. You just basically nullify it. And they send out these other droids that say, according to law so-and-so, this has now been reversed. So you are able to use items at the shop, or there will be no enemies spawned in, etc., and things like that. And again, it was kind of cool, but it was built in tediousness and backtracking. And it was just the intentional backtracking tediousness of it really just killed the pacing of it. And then they also added, it just feels like all these last minute thoughts, like, oh, wait, we promised we put this in the game, kind of energy. For example, they added this thing called Kulon, and this giant winged creature. And throughout the entire game, you've never had a fast travel option or an airship in Final Fantasy, and suddenly they give you this winged creature that can fly through the skies, and suddenly you can go to almost anywhere in the map, which is kind of cool, except for the fact that if I wanted to go to the beginning area, I would have to insert disc 1. So it's kind of like, okay, all right, this is kind of cool that I can now travel the world, but I'm literally not going to do it because I have to do at least 2 disc swaps to get back to to go do whatever and then get back to where I was. It was good though, because in the Holy City in Disc 3, the one thing I didn't have enough money for is the legendary armor. And I thought, well, it's called Legend of Dragoon, and this armor is literally almost necessary, I think, for the final fight, because it nullifies almost all damage, except for the very final boss that just eats through it. But I digress. But the fact I was so relieved I could go back. And again, it feels like something, yeah, this works, but this doesn't work because it's so onerous no one's really ever going to use it, kind of thing. But it's only if we needed it, which I guess technically I did. And I appreciate it, but it just feels like a last minute thing. And they just throw it in there in the middle of the Zenibatos dungeon. They're just like, okay, you can do this now. You also have the ability to warp to other dungeons, and again, they're just kind of doing this last minute thing where like, well, we promised we'd do this or something. And then you finally get to the last dungeon, Mayfill, and again, I couldn't tell. I was like, okay, am I gonna fight the final boss after this? Is there another dungeon? Like, I had no idea what was happening or what was gonna go on. And in this last dungeon, there's kind of like a final save point, and then finally you get to the point where Rose tells you, okay, this is the point of no return. This is like, we can't go back at all after this. And the final third, dungeon city. And again, I'm always, I know there's not a precedent for anyone really doing this correctly, but it's really frustrating when you hit the point of no return. And okay, this could be a final boss, or it could be, as in this case, an entirely new dungeon. So it's like, okay, what's the point of having an entirely new dungeon if you're going to cut me off and I can't go back anyway? It just, I don't know, it doesn't make any sense to me. you should only cut off the player and tell them this is the final thing if it's the final fight. So what I thought would be another maybe 30 minutes of gameplay was actually at least 3 more hours of gameplay. And again, at this point, it's not exactly bad gameplay. It's cool we do all these stories and backgrounds for all of our characters, but it felt like it was so tacked on. It felt like, oh right, we forgot to do this for Miranda and Kongal and Meru and whatever. And it's like, I think it'd be fine if those were optional things, but I don't know. It just felt like it really broke up the pacing. And then the whole fact is that you go inside the moon, and this is a cool thing, reminding me of Majora's Mask. You go inside the moon and it starts terraforming to your memory, so it starts creating forests and fields and all these other things, and just a bunch of crazy whatever stuff happens, psychedelic stuff. And then finally you get to the end of that dungeon, the moon, and you you finally can fight the final boss. And as I recall, it actually allows you to at least save before each phase. I mean, technically it's a 2-phase fight, but you can actually go back and save before the very, very final boss. And yeah, I don't really have any complaints about the final boss. It was really fun. It was it was also very, very tight. I think I started that fight and I realized I was going to lose and I had to reset. And I went back to like the potion shop and I got all the potions that I possibly could that I would need, and everything from multi heals, team heals, reses, to status effects. Just on one note on that, I really like how they do the potions and the items in this game. It's frustrating you can only hold 32 of them, I guess. But I love how for most of the game you have one potion. And like Final Fantasy, you have you have potion, high potion, mega potion, blah blah potion, and I really prefer the simplicity of this design and system, in which a potion is always going to give you half of your health. I was like, this is awesome. And it's only until near the end of the game, or at least in Disc 3, you get Healing Fog, which gives you 100% HP. And so I really like that. It's not like, okay, here's 300 HP, and like, okay, 300, is that enough for this or whatever? It was so easy and consistent and so reliable to know, okay, I just need to use like a potion once I'm at half my health, or if I'm near, dying or something. Or I think I can, hit, survive the enemy's next attack, then I'll wait off on healing. It was a much better system to have a very simple potion system. Another thing I also really liked is for status debuff healing, you had Mind Purifier and Body Purifier. So you had essentially one thing or two different healing items for all these status effects. It's so frustrating in Final Fantasy games when you have like eye drops and or whatever for silence. You have like a different item for every single debuff in the game, of which there are at least around 10. So you just have this inventory, or this space in your inventory, for the one time you get poisoned near the end game. You can then heal that 10 points of poison you would have taken. And sometimes it's not even worth healing at that point, right? So it's just all these useless items. But here it's kind of like the items do so much that you actually bother using them. I actually used a lot of items, including a lot of offensive items in this game, that I wasn't afraid of not getting, because they were so consistently replenishing them with treasure chests. It's kind of like, okay, well, I have to use this. And because of the inventory limit, it's like, I literally have to use this item. I need to use this offensive item, this like super ultra light attack, because if I don't, I can't carry the next item. And I am also very thankful that when you pick up a chest and your inventory is full, it just puts the item back in the chest. So you have to choose, okay, what do we have to get rid of or use or sell or whatever. So that's all really good. But yeah, I just love that the potions were just so streamlined. Like it just got rid of so many headaches and just the bloat that you're used to in these games. I'm also very surprised near the end game that you had infinite use items that were really, really useful, that I thought, man, I'm glad I have these. And it's almost kind of like you shouldn't be able to sell them. For example, every single battle, you'll have one thing of like power up, speed up, and defense down for the enemy. as well as stasis for up to three moves. And I was just shocked that, oh wait, when it's because it said rep for like repeat, and again, this game has not the best translation, so I think it'd be a lot better if it had the infinity sign, because it's like, oh wait, I can use this infinite times. And I thought when it meant repeat, I thought, oh no, it'll repeatedly do this to the enemy, and it's still a one-time use. And then I realized, oh wait, it's still my inventory when I went to the next battle. So it didn't very much convey it well, but there's incredibly useful items, especially near the end game, that were a lot of fun to use and almost necessary. It's like, I think the the right combination is you do speed up on the person that has to heal, you do power up on your strongest character, power down on the bad guy, obviously, and if he was susceptible to blocking, then you use that first, actually, because then you can just build up your team and your power. But yeah, final boss was great. It was really, really cool to do. I'm not going to spoil it, but essentially throughout the boss fight, there's 3 different phases, and between each phases, they retell or are retelling the days of Genesis and the creation of everything. And so the final fight is on the 6th day, and it shows this whole. It's really cool. I don't know. It shows the creation of the world, the animals, humans, just overall really cool stuff. And again, just ripped straight from Genesis. What I also liked with Final Boss Fight is I did beat it technically on my first try. That I was going in full, but I remember it was the final form of the boss. He was like on the 6th day, so I don't know if he was going to go to the final day, the 7th day when God rested. I don't know if he had a 4th form, but his health was in red, and I'd run out of all of my healing items, all of my status debuffs. Like, all I had left were like magic refill, which already had full magic. So I literally had no items left, and I fully stocked up. And I was using Dart, Rose, and Miranda for healing and whatever. But it was a really intense fight, and I had used up all of my MP, and I had Dart basically like, okay, just attack him with your sword. I've used up everything, and I think I was so close that if it went for 5 more turns, I think we would be screwed. I mean, I did have Miranda, but I think she was out of magic. I mean, she could have res dust, but then I think she got impersonated by the little thing. It doesn't matter. Anyway, it was one of those heartbeat, I can't believe I killed the boss kind of moment, which was really, really great. I guess just on that point, another thing that I really love what Dragoon does that I wish they did in other RPGs is how they indicate health and other things. So when you're in the overworld and you're running around, Dart will have a little triangle above his head, and it'll go from blue to yellow to red, and that actually shows the enemy encounter probability, which I really, really like. So once it's in the red, you know that if you take a few more steps, you're going to go into a fight. And similar to Final Fantasy VII, it does like a kind of texture blur, but it goes vertically every time. But anyway, I really love that effect. I really hated it when I'd be playing Final Fantasy X or 7, and you're walking around, and suddenly the screen. I think I remember the first time it happened, it almost scared me in FF7. Like the whole screen blurs and screeches, and it makes this transition sound that sounds like static, and it's scary when you don't know when it's going to happen. Honestly, it's a little bit freakish and frustrating. I guess on that, my favorite screen transition is actually Final Fantasy IX. It's legitimately really cool. But here it kind of predicts and warns the player, not exactly when you're going to encounter, but more or less when you're going to do it. This also translates into the fights. And what's really shocking or really interesting that totally breaks convention is that the enemy will never have HP displayed. There's no like special buff or attack or scanning thing that you can do to actually see the enemy's HP. The enemy's HP will again be represented by a triangle above their head, which will be blue, yellow, or red. And I kind of really like this because you never know quite how much health the enemy has, and it's always very something you got to feel out when you enter a new boss fight. Like, okay, I've been hitting him, and he's still in blue. Are you kidding me? There are other times where enemies will, they'll be in red, but you won't know exactly how much they have left, and so you're kind of debating, okay, do I use my weaker attack or do I wait for this person to attack and things like that. Honestly, it's a system that works really well. I find that not seeing the enemy's health is not a deal breaker at all. And yeah. Again, overworld is great. It's funny that you go into the overworld and you kind of go on this little mini map, similar to FF7, and you can get encounters there as well. But it's pretty rare. And again, what I enjoyed is that when you start the game, the world map evolves. So every time you unlock a new pathway in the world map, it's always to the next objective. Like, you just never get lost in this game, which I absolutely adore and I think is super, super important. And the last thing, I don't know, I want to wrap this up, but one of the best things about this game, and this was the moment where I said, oh, now I gotta beat it. The thing that really hooked me and brought me in were the Dragoons. I know, it's kind of obvious and stupid, but the design for the Dragoon armor and the animations for these characters' transformations are so cool, especially Rose, where she goes inside this like black hole of like purple black energy, and she comes out and she throws her sword and they have these like wings. I really like it because it's kind of like this is their angel form or something. I mean, it's their Dragoon energy that's being stored in a gem, basically. It's also very, very Power Rangers, where they like transform and power up. And the whole Dragoon aesthetic is just, it's so cool. It's so cool. I can't help but not fall in love with how unapologetically cool the design and animations are. And it's not just transforming, but obviously the attacking part is really, really cool. Again, when you go into Dragoon mode, there's so many things that change. For example, if you want to attack, you have this meter, and there's a ball that goes, and you have to hit it every time it hits the thing, and it gets faster every time. And if you do it 5 times in a row perfectly, it'll say perfect, and you'll do ultimate damage, and you'll do this giant explosion at the end of your combo, which feels really, really cool. Aside from that, when you enter Dragoon mode, you can then start using magic. And so this is where you just get these crazy animations that, in my perspective, some of these animations feel like they're made for fan games, or someone's making an idea of what an over-the-top JRPG animation would look like. They're just really fun. For example, Dart, he has like these fire wings which manifest and then become normal kind of armor or like synthetic angel wings or whatever. And he has all these fire-based attacks where he's shooting fireballs and he's throwing his sword up in the air, and then he does this eruption thing. And the absolute best move of the game, aesthetically and tactfully in terms of damage, is Final Burst. I just spam Final Burst in all the boss fights, and I never got bored of it. Plus, I think the rumble was really good for when to rumble during cutscenes, and each one of these animations, that without rumble, it's a very different experience. It feels really, really cool. And Final Burst is so cool. Dart, he charges up with his fire energy, and he takes his sword and he creates this like Kamehameha force field around him, and he goes right through the enemy and creates this giant volcano explosion. Really, really cool. I just, once I saw that, I was like, well, I gotta beat the game now. It was just so much fun using Dragoon mode, honestly. And what I also love is when you first unlock it, the icon on the battle menu is a Dragoon eye winking at you. Like, it's just, when you see, like, it's like, in Persona, when you see gun, you're like, whoa, what? That's kind of crazy. But in this game, it's like attack, defend, item, run away, okay, whatever, and then Dragoon button. Like, it's so cool. And everyone has great animations. Literally, yeah, pretty much all the characters have like top tier animations. My favorite one in terms of choreography is probably Meru with ice dust or ice storm or something, diamond dust, where she creates these icicles and it crushes the enemy, and then she shoots like an energy beam to destroy it at them. But what's really cool about it is that the animation has this thing where it actually zooms in the camera and it moves the camera. Everyone's all the other animations for everyone else, they're all moving while the camera is stationary and panning around them, doing all this cool stuff. But in Meru's, the camera actually moves with the animation. It has this huge explosion at the end that feels very different from the other ones, and I think it's really, really cool. Again, she does this thing like rainbow breath. The healing animations look super cool. What's her face? Rose does this healing thing where she like shoots her sword into the enemy and like is dragging out their power, and then she shoots from her body the energy that she's gonna siphon off from them to heal you. And then the moment it like clicked again with me is the sword comes back to her and she like grabs it and puts it over her shoulder, and these sparks and sparkles go flying with her hair. It was like, okay, this is friggin' cool, man. Like it's all pixelated or whatever, but it's so cool that I had to stick with it. So literally the Dragoon mode like locked me in. It literally kept me. It actually kept me till the end of the game because I want to see everyone's movesets. It was super cool. I think it's funny that I thought everyone has a moveset. Everyone has a Dragoon mode, and people get Dragoon modes pretty quick in this game. It's almost comical. It's like, oh, I found a dragon stone. Here you go. Become a Dragoon. I didn't think it would happen, but even Kongal, like the brain dead caveman near the end of the game in disc 4, after the first 3 dungeons and literally the last dungeon, when he does this confrontation with himself, he gets his Dragoon form. I was like, what? I literally didn't think it was going to happen, and because he just gets it, it's only 1 meter. So I talked about this earlier, but every time you attack, you accumulate spirit power. For every combo successfully QTE you get, and if you do the full combo, you get a lot. And so that's how you enter your Dragoon form. And again, like Kongal getting a Dragoon form is something that feels like DLC, because it was just I did not think it was going to happen. I did not think I would get an ability to go fly wherever in the map. So there's a lot of things in the 4th disc that just feel like, oh, we really, 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 really wanted to do this, but we ran out of time, when I feel like a lot of that content should have just been cut. I would have been so much happier, like I said, going to the final fight by the end of disc 3. I feel like all that extra content didn't really add to the experience, and I think honestly made it worse in some ways. But yeah, if we just went to the final dungeon right after, if disc 4 was just the final dungeon, I think I'd be much more happier with it, I think. But yeah, overall, I think that's kind of where I want to end this review. I really, really enjoyed this game a lot more than I thought. When I think of peak classic JRPGs on the PlayStation from the 90s, this is the game I'm thinking of. It's so stereotypical and archetypically JRPG, but in the best ways. You have a cast of characters with colors, a typical story that deals with, Gnostic, hegemony or whatever. And it's not overcomplicated. You fight all these enemies, you fight all these creatures, characters, whatever. And it's simple item system, simple upgrade system, very streamlined, very fun, and something I just found myself every day for the past couple weeks just relaxing to and making progress. It's always that feeling of you want to make progress in a game, even if you not necessarily enjoy it, and push yourself a little bit. But I just kind of able to take it like every day, just a couple hours here, a couple hours there, and feel content with my experience and feel like, oh, right, I forgot something, or, oh, no, I'm going to lose context. Like, no, none of that ever happened. Which, again, felt really good. But yeah, overall, Legend of Dragoon feels like a real gem. I know people have said this game is highly rated. I know they've praised it. I know it came out the year 2000. So let's be honest, every amazing great game was coming out from 1995 to 2005, and 2000 was filled with so many great games that it makes sense why this one was kind of swept under the bus, because there were just so many good ones back then. And yeah, generally on top of that, it feels like a real hidden gem. This is a legitimately a great JRPG that still holds up in current year, and I'm really glad I played it. Again, just for a bit of left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth a little bit, but overall a very, very highly recommended experience. Oh, and I guess music was fine. Music was pretty good, pretty on point. Nothing super amazing, but it was fine. But yeah, that's Legend of Dragoon. Anyway, I hope you guys get to experience this one day, and I swear this game would do so well as a remake or a remaster. Like, this is begging for a remake because it is such a solid game, and I feel like people just have not played it or don't know about it. And I kept thinking as I was playing it, if this got the Final Fantasy VII remake treatment, it would be up there. It would be top. It would be up there with all these other games. It would be a huge hit. Anyway, I hope you get to play this or the potential possible remake in my mind at some point, and come to enjoy it. Anyway, that's it for this one. I'll see you guys later. Bye.